He got it done. He got it done. That's right. Yeah, I think a lift. He would have been able to get all. There's 5 of these eaves here, so I think. Oh, thank you very much. Could you get the? Thank you. Have you guys met Becky yet? All right, I'll introduce you. Yes, to Becca. She comes back in. She's the. Oh, she's still working. Yeah. You guys, this is Becca. Becca, this is All Out Energy Services. Actually, there's a couple guys missing there, right?
Yeah, we still got 3 or 4.
The good-looking ones are actually working. Yeah, this is what you get. Yeah. Cool.
We'll run across the hall.
You want to go ahead and sign the address? All right. I thought you had a girlfriend. Whispers.
Got a wife.
Oh, are you married? Do you have any kids?
We just were 6 weeks pregnant.
I
I got married 6.5 weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you? I didn't know that. I feel like, why are you guys laughing right now? I don't understand.
I'm on the fast track.
Fast
Trying
track.
to catch up.
I guess so. If it gets hot, I will let you know. It probably will get a little bit hot in here. You guys might want to.
This door was locked earlier.
Really?
Yeah.
That's weird. How'd you guys get in?
My man.
Credit card? Did it work?
Yeah.
It's good to know, just in case you need to.
Obviously, we got in.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to know how you got in. If we're gonna have to pay the bill. All right. So those are the 2 things you can't see: is the rebar and the eye patch. After this, because I'm sitting there working with this guy, and I'm thinking, okay, or watching this guy work all day, and I'm thinking, if I don't go and let this guy know how dangerous this is, I'm going to feel pretty responsible, especially because we were laughing at him all day, because he'd do one thing after another, and we're all just cracking up at him because we're like, dude. So I went over to him afterwards and I said, hey, it looks like you're doing a good job. You got her done. Way to go. Do you think there's a safer way that you could do that job? What do you think he said?
He probably got pretty irritated. Screw off.
He wasn't immediately a jerk to me. He said, no. This is the safest way because they don't want to scratch the side of the building. They're very particular about not scratching the side of this building. And I said, well, what about like a man lift or a
Cherry picker.
A scaffold or something? Jeez, get a backhoe and put stand in the bucket, do something. You know what I mean? No, I didn't say that. That's not a good one. But, and he said, no, this is the best way to do it. Do you think this is the first time Billy's done a job like this that way? Why did he have 2 ladders there?
He's used to doing it.
This is the way he does his job. Now, statistically, do you guys know how many, and I don't know if you remember this from the OSHA class or not, how many people die a day from fall in the workplace? You guys remember the statistics on that? It's about 2.5 people every single day die from falling. It's the #1 killer in the workplace outside of the oil field. The oil field's separate, and the oil field is now falling. The little slip, strips, and falls, they kind of put in the same category. Does anyone know what it is in the oil field?
Struck by.
Struck by. Yep, getting struck by something, or caught in or struck by, is what #1. The #2 is explosions. And then down in there is electrical shock. A lot of people get electrocuted in the oil field. A lot of people, H2S, get about 1 or 2 deaths just here in North Dakota alone from H2S every single year. I know you guys don't encounter a lot of it, but actually Doug and I met on an H2S well. That's how it was before All Out Energy Services, but H2S is out there in the Bakken. Are you guys? I think it was at the center. Are you there out there too? Gotcha. Yeah, I caught Doug without his hard hat being right, so that's how it.
Wearing a hoodie under his hard hat.
Yeah. You guys don't do that now, do you?
No.
Yeah. Good deal.
We heard the story though.
Yeah, that's a good story. He was trying to be safe,
I was
though.
picking the worst of 2 evils.
He made it right. He did make it right. All right, so...
Hey, so question on that.
Yeah, go
What's
ahead.
the difference between a hard hat, wearing your hoodie and a hard hat, or the deals that go in your hard hat?
Oasis is kind of weird. They bought, actually, for their employees, an MSA version. It's the mine safety equipment or whatever. It's the same company that makes the hard hat. They bought that, and it actually is designed to go underneath the harness of your hard hat, and it has to be designed for that purpose. So, like, if it's made by the company that does that, then you're fine because it's approved.
You know,
But just like a hooded sweatshirt or like a beanie or a ball cap, just not accepted.
They make them. They're really hard to find though. I couldn't even find that one that you had. The bulwark one.
Oh, you know where you find them in Williston is at the believe it or not at the Cenex.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
The one right here?
Right, Home of Economy. Yep.
Horizon.
Horizon Resources. Yep, they got them there. Yep, they're like $15 or $20.
That's a downtown right there.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but if you get a deal with them, like it's back on all your fuel purchases at the end of the year.
Really?
If you fill up there.
Really?
Yep. So
It's a lot.
at the end of the year, it is. Yeah. So essentially, if gas is at $1, you pay 95 cents. It's at $2, you pay whatever.
It's
$1.
a diesel, right?
Yep.
They got good diesel?
Yep. All the farmers use it too. It's good. So you can use dyed diesel. No big deal.
About $2
Put
grand.
it in there. Actually, you guys can use diesel. You guys can use diesel at the end of the year, right? Or, I mean, you can use dyed diesel out on location, can't you?
Yeah, we found
Yeah, I mean for like generators and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, for a light plant, but not for the vehicles, right? Yeah. All right, so we're gonna go over fall protection. Before we do that, I want you guys to analyze Billy's situation. Let me bring that picture back up here. Where'd you go, Billy?
So they just cut you a check at the end of the year or something?
Yep.
In your account?
Yeah, they cut you a check. Where did Billy go?
Fell off the ladder.
He must have fell off the ladder. Well, anyway, I asked him about it, and he said, no, this isn't the safest way to do it. And then at the end, then he stopped talking to me because I told him the statistics. He wasn't very excited about that. One thing I want to show you guys here real quick, and I know Ben probably showed you this as well. Have you guys seen the OSHA weekly reports of fatalities? I'm going to show you guys the weekly fatality report here. So the most recent one is January 11th. No, it's not true. October 15th, 2015.
It was a December one.
Oh, was there December? That's the one I wanted. There you are. So basically, the end of the year last year. That's not actually the one I wanted. Weekly. If you go to OSHA and you type in weekly fatality report, it summary.
You are taking this one?
Yep.
Or no?
Yeah, but I'll just probably edit this. Here we are. It's 2010. Let's do 920. Because really, it really doesn't matter when we. Hey, this one's pretty good. I want you to just read through those real quick and see if you see any reoccurring reasons for death.
Natural causes.
Natural causes happens a lot. What do you guys think that is, natural causes? A lot of times it can be heart attack, yeah. Yep. You see any, other than that, any common occurrings?
Struck by something.
Caught in between,
Struck by.
fall from height, struck by, caught in between, struck by. Electrocution, get one of those every once in a while. Helicopter crash, that's pretty intense. Fall from height, struck by. A lot of natural causes. I'm actually surprised by that. Retail natural causes. Interesting. So you see a lot of struck by. This is in, it looks like a few different weeks there. So a bunch of different industries there. So why do you think all those people die from being struck by? I mean, are those unavoidable situations where people get killed like that? Is just unavoidable? You guys think?
No.
Situational awareness? What does that mean, situational awareness?
security, I mean, but say, another crew might be doing something over here that you aren't aware of.
You guys ever see that in the field? Would it be possible, hypothetically, for another group of people on location to get you hurt?
Yes.
Like who?
Wireline.
Wireline crew?
Frac crew,
Frac crew?
roundabout,
Truckers driving around,
Exactly.
back up into.
Oasis's speed limit policy is 5 miles per hour on location. What do you think about that? Does that happen?
Never.
You see a loader only going 5 miles per hour ever? No, those things are bouncing
Those
around.
truck drivers coming through there.
I know, just
50
dipping
miles.
Yeah, 15,
right
20.
in front of the door.
Yeah, that's the way it is. I think that most incidences, fatalities are avoidable. I do think that especially, when tornadoes happen or a guy has a heart attack, like people get hurt or killed, like there's not anything you can do about it. I mean, you could break it down and be like, maybe he didn't eat right, maybe, his wife was crazy and gave him a lot of stress and so he got killed, whatever. Had a heart attack where he just was just trying to get out of the relationship and couldn't think of a better way than just, eating himself to death. I don't know. Who knows? I do know this, that hazard assessment is, in my opinion, a lot of times the reason. Now, you guys do JSAs every day, right? Do you do it at the beginning of every shift or just at the beginning of the day?
Beginning of the day.
Beginning of the day, so you analyze your hazards, you go through it. What you do, and I don't know if you know this or not, there's two things you guys do when you do JSA, and Billy did not do this. You ask yourself two questions. The first question you're going to ask yourself is this. We're going to say risk here. I wish I had a whiteboard, but there's one in my office. So there's risk. You're going to ask yourself this every time. And so the first question you're going to ask yourself is, what's the likelihood that an accident could occur? So we're talking about Billy here. First question he's going to ask is, okay, I'm going to climb up these two ladders. I'm going to install this fascia board, 26 feet in the air. I'm over some rebar, right? I'm working alone. No one's here helping me. No one's holding the ladder. I'm not securing the ladder by any means to anything. Just put it up there. This is a newly constructed building with earth. It's virgin earth, meaning it's never had anything built on it before. It's not been compacted, so the earth isn't settled right. Okay, these are all my situations that I'm going to do this with. What's the likelihood that an injury or an accident could occur?
Very likely.
Very likely. Now the second question you ask yourself, and we do this in a JSA every single time, even if we don't know it, what would the severity of that accident be if it were to occur?
Pretty severe.
Pretty severe. I mean,
Probably death.
death or serious
26
physical.
feet.
Yeah, I mean, 26 feet. Serious physical impairment. And it's kind of difficult to know what that would look like sometimes. Like, what's 26 feet of falling look like? Imagine this. If you're standing on the back of Doug's pickup, and Doug doesn't know you're back there, and you're pulling something out, and he just takes off, and you fall straight back on your head. How many feet is that?
8 foot probably.
You got a jacked up truck?
Well, on the back.
Yeah, just
bed
the
About 3
tailgate.
foot.
4 foot probably.
3-4 foot. How severely do you think you could be hurt, landing right on your head?
Pretty severe.
Concussion.
From 3 or 4 feet, like you could get really messed up. Not falling very far. 26 feet. Under rebar. You know what I mean? So if he were to analyze it, just ask himself two very simple questions. Doesn't take a rocket scientist, doesn't take a guy educated. You could be barely out of high school, barely out of the 3rd grade, and you ask yourself those two questions, you can come to an answer. And if the two answers he came with, the first answer was very likely, the second answer was fatality. It's very likely that fatality could occur here. What should your response be?
Maybe I shouldn't do that.
Change it.
Maybe I shouldn't do it or I should change it. Because the job has to get done. Here's what probably happened. It started a long time ago when they bid the job. Right? He probably bid the job at nothing, thinking I could just get some ladders out there. He gets out there, holy crap. This is straight up and down. There's nowhere to put my ladders. So instead of going back and saying, hey man, we need a man lift out here. What would a man lift do to the bid price of that job?
Go up.
What's the cost of a ladder? $200? That's the price of that man lift every single day. But you could have got it done in one day, right? So,
Yeah.
but you got to keep the ladder. You got to send the man lift back, unless you spend 20, 30 grand on it. So you got bid price, poor planning of the job. Then you get out to the job. You don't analyze the risk, and then you keep working, even though you recognize that this could be really serious. So when you guys are out there, I don't know if you guys are using whip checks on any of your stuff or not. If you get out there, and I mean, what would happen if your iron blew under high pressure?
Well, it depends.
Where would it go? What if you were standing over it?
It depends if it has water. If it's water, if it's got gas in there.
All right. Let's say it was gas.
Um,
What if it was water?
just bust apart.
List apart. What
No
about
expansion.
the valves or pieces of metal when it broke apart?
Fly.
Not much.
Should be flying.
Not really that much with water.
Not with water so much, but maybe the gas.
Yeah, there's no expansion.
So what would happen on the gas? A bomb.
Yeah. Even, I mean,
You gotta imagine iron buckling under pressure and breaking apart.
it'd be bad.
It would be really bad. So what's to keep that from going too far?
Loop checks, I guess. That's bad too.
What's wrong with whip checks?
I mean, for one thing, you got the right loop checks.
I agree with that. Yeah, you can't just
You
take
can't
some
just throw some
keyhole.
loop checks in there.
Yeah, you can make whip checks pretty cheap at the hardware store.
Well, because you can buy loop checks, there's strength tension on them. So you got to make sure the tensile strength on them is right for what you're doing.
Definitely right. Yeah,
That and just another piece of shrapnel just to keep throwing in the air.
that's possible. Especially if it's not right. The reason I bring that up, frankly, guys, is because that's one thing that could get really bad out of hand real fast if it did
Yeah.
go. What's the likelihood of that happening?
Well,
Very likely.
it depends on how, if you test your iron,
You guys do test your iron?
test it, inspect it. You gotta inspect it in between tests. That's what a lot of people don't realize.
Do you guys do that third party or do you do it
Third
yourself?
party.
You do that third party?
That's what just happened to Oasis right now. Like recently, their equipment, they had a lot of shit going out,
Mhm.
and they had to shut down for like, I don't know, they were down like 12 days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But they don't inspect it in between the tests.
And that's the thing, yeah. They just wait until it's due for testing.
Yeah, that's not a
They don't do
good
visual
system.
inspection.
And the reason I bring that up is because it's not just your guys' stuff that you have to worry about. Are you guys just confined to your area and you don't walk around location at all around other stuff?
No, we don't run all their stuff.
Yeah, you do. So I mean, once again, likelihood of it happening and hurting somebody, statistically, think of all the hours that flowback jobs are going on in North Dakota right now. All the hours, and how often do you hear that happening? Not very often. So we're gonna say the likelihood's small, but then the severity is, if it were to happen, large. So you always want to ask that. Now, sometimes it's not cost feasible. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's just not to be cost feasible to make them. The goal is to make them both minimal, low likelihood, low severity. Right? That's the goal.
There's really one way to do it. You get an anchor.
Anchor.
And it's
People used to do the damn the drive stakes in the ground too. That shit.
Yeah. And there's a problem with that. I mean, what I've seen some guys do is you get your clevises on there, and then you get the D rings, and then you run a whip check through those D rings, so you got the D rings there. You can also run a line through all of them, so you have just a kind of like an eyelet on top of where all the unions meet, and it's just clamped on there. It comes with the pipe. You take it off and on for inspection, and you just run a cable through there. If it were to break, the cable would hold everything tight.
Yeah.
You'd still get some stuff that would go, but you wouldn't have a
Yeah.
valve coming at you or a hammer unit. You know what I mean? Flying through the air at somebody or through something. So, because what if it were to go in your tank and spark and you get gas and things could turn really bad real quick. I'm pointing out one of the worst possible scenarios, and that's the way you should think sometimes, right? Should you always just think, well, this wouldn't be so bad? I want you guys to think, what is the worst possible scenario if something here went wrong? And what would we do to fix it? You know what I'm saying? Because that's how a safe company thinks. If you just think, nothing will ever happen to me, I'm going to climb up 26 feet on these ladders, and there's no possibility anything's going to happen. When we looked at that fatality report, people die every single day out there in the oil field and in other fields of work. You know what I'm saying? Usually it's not from iron breaking. 90% of the time it's from human error. People doing things they shouldn't be, climbing up where they shouldn't be climbing, not assessing the situation. You know what I mean? But whose job is your safety out in the field?
Hard drive.
I mean, because what some guys will do, they'll come to work for a company, they'll come to work for Steve and Doug, and they'll say, it's Steve's and Doug's job to keep me safe. So if they don't keep me safe, I don't care. It's their job. It's not my job. And when they're in the hospital, is that going to comfort them that it's Steve and Doug's fault? What if it was 100% their fault? I'm not saying it would be, but if it was, it's their fault that you don't have any arms or legs. Are you going to sit in the hospital with a smile on your face because it's someone else's fault? No, you're not. Yeah, you might get a check. But you know,
Can't sign that check.
You
though.
think- Actually, there was a guy here with Green Light Energy Services. I don't know anything about them, but then Blackhawk Energy Services. He was the guy with the hooks. Did you guys see any of the posters for that? He was.
Okay.
What did he say?
This is Blackout.
Blackhawk was one of the companies that sponsored. Oh, he wasn't from Blackhawk.
Oh, I was gonna
This guy was actually, he was an electrical contractor in the 70s. And he was doing a power line tie-in or doing something. And supposedly the line was dead, but it was live. Or someone kicked it on, and he's up there working on it. And the power shot through it. Boom, blew his arms out. Went through his feet, had some damage in his feet and the tissues and stuff. So now he doesn't have any arms from the elbows down. It's just hooks. They tried to save him. They couldn't do it. So he's got 2 hooks. And he comes to talk about safety. And he's like, listen, guys, I've never held my wife's hand because it happened before you got married. I've never actually held my wife. I've only hooked her, you know? And he says, he's got a bunch of kids. He's like, my children have never had me pat them on the back or pick them up. You know what I mean? Like, that's my life, you know? And he's like, you don't want to be like me. He's like, yeah, I made it out. Yeah, I got a big check from it, but he's like, it wasn't as much as you think. He got $12,000 from the power company. After legal fees, paid the lawyer, paid everything, $12,000. That's what he ended up with. Because in the 70s, things were different. You know what I mean? So, $12,000. How many jobs do you think are available to him with hooks in his hands? Can't type, can't lift stuff, can't move anything. You know what I
Safety
mean?
meeting guy.
Yeah, that's what he is. He's a safety meeting guy. You know what I mean? That's all he can do. So don't be.
For $1 million, do you want to cut both your hands off?
Fuck no.
Why not just be smart and figure out a way to make $1 million
I mean,
and not lose your hands? That's right. Or become a hitman. You know, pays really good these days.
no,
I'm just joking.
I don't know who would do that, but
Exactly. So we're going to talk about falling. Once again, not our greatest hazard. It's actually being struck by things like valves flying through the air or explosions like pipe exploding. That's actually where oil field guys get killed. Flowback, not so common, but fires do happen in flowback. That's kind of what gave All Out an opportunity, was that companies weren't doing stuff safely, right? I mean, a lot of new companies out here, that's why we have opportunities, because other companies don't do things right. So you guys are going to be guys who do things right, even if it takes more time, because I promise you, taking more time to do a job will not lose you an MSA. But doing things unsafely will lose you an MSA quick, just like that. They won't even ask questions. All right, so first of all, we're going to talk about fall hazards where we work. We're going to talk about fall protection systems, the fall arrest system, requirements for employee rescue, and demonstrated techniques. For you guys who've been through the OSHA 10 hour, we've already been through this. You've seen this chart here before. So this is 06. There were about, 2.5 people. There were 809 fatalities for workplace-related falls. That's about 2.5 employees per day. Non-moving vehicle, 10% of people died falling off of pickups, or tractors, or unloading pipe from the back of a trailer. I don't know if you guys have ever been to like a grocery, or rather a hardware store, and you see guys in the back of trailers loading up wood, not tied off. From roof, ladder, and scaffolding, staging, construction industry, that's 50% of falls. So that's where most people are dying from falling, is in that industry, is in construction. So the first thing you want to ask yourself is where fall protection is required, how to work safely at heights, select and install proper fall protection systems, and training workers to use the system. So what's the highest you guys go out on location? I mean,
9 feet.
9 feet? What are you doing at 9 feet?
Top of the frac tank.
So you guys are up there, what are you doing? Up on top of the
Strapping the tank.
you scalpel.
Push scaffold around.
There is? That's good. Has it always been that way?
I mean,
If
I've
it's
worked
not,
on
you got-
some jobs without it.
Mm-hmm. Usually it's going to have the scaffolding. That's good. So you don't have to tie off or anything, right? Because you got the guardrails and stuff. That's good. So when is fall protection required? Do you guys know how many feet?
3.
It's 4 feet in general industry, but in construction it's 6 feet. So this is the highest you can ever be, but generally for us it's 4 feet. When there is a hazard of falling into general dangerous equipment, so if you fall into something that's turning or grinding or moving, or any other activity required by OSHA. So
I always think about it like this, just so y'all know that it's eye level.
it's pretty much fair. Eye level or a little bit lower. I'd say chin level, but eye level, Yeah. So really the requirement's about right here, and Does it happen in the oil field? I don't know, because this side of my truck comes up to about right here. So if I
Well, for 6 feet though, right?
yeah, if you're 6 feet, but oil field is 4 now. It used to be 6.
is
They
it?
just changed it to 4. Yeah, I don't know why it says 4 in there, or why it says 6 there. Yeah, I'll have to get on my guy who made this. All right, so the fall protection hierarchy, we have elimination, number 1, guardrails, fall restraint, fall arrest, and other acceptable systems. Elimination is always number 1, right? Because if we can eliminate from having to work at heights, can you guys eliminate from having to go on top of the frac tanks?
Well, you can.
What can you do?
Side glass.
Side glass?
Yeah.
Why don't they do that?
Clogs up, because too much sand
Yeah,
clogs up on the inside.
scratches up, clogs up,
Accuracy.
not accurate. So we're going to go up there, right? So, okay, then what are we going to do? That's why they build guardrails. That's number 2. If you can't eliminate, you build a guardrail. Can you always build a guardrail? Then a lot of people get these two confused, fall restraint and fall arrest. Have any of you guys ever been arrested by police officers? All right, anybody? I've been arrested myself. Of course, only on traffic violations, right? So, traffic violation arrest. Actually, it did happen. It was kind of a crazy story. I had a headlight out because I let a girl fill up my gas tank. I said, "Hey, fill that up." So when I come back, I accidentally parked the car on the wrong side. So she drove around to the other side and smashed the vehicle into the little cement block. Actually, at Horizon Resources, that's where that happened when I was like 20 years old. Needless to say, I was not very happy with that girl. So she smashes it in. I get pulled over, and I had a warrant for my arrest for a speeding ticket I'd gotten months ago that never came to my house because at the time I had an out-of-state license. So if you ever get a speeding ticket here, make sure you pay your ticket because they take that junk seriously. So they took me to the. I just paid the bail.
Pretty
and
cheap,
I got out.
$12.
Yeah.
It was 20 exactly. It was $20, 20 bucks, but I didn't pay it. They did not take that very. They were not very happy about that. So I got a ticket and they arrested me. So that would have been a lot better, or what would have been a lot better is if they didn't arrest me, if they just held me for a while until I paid the fine and then they let me go. There's a big difference between being restrained by the police and being arrested by the police, right? Same way in fall arrest, it's easy to remember. It's better to be restrained than arrested. A fall restraint system is where it actually keeps you from falling over an edge, like if you have a short lanyard or a tether, rather than actually falling over the edge. One option for this, and I highly recommend it if you guys ever have to go up in the heights, rather than hooking up this whole arrest system and lanyard and trying to find a tie-off point, you get an SRL. You know what SRL is? It's and I'm sure you've seen them before. It's kind of like a big circle, and you hook up to it, and if you fall, it's like acts like a seatbelt where it locks. So if you move more than so fast, it locks. And I'm going to show you a video about how these work here at the end. All right, so safe practices for working in heights, obviously making sure there's nothing you're going to slip on. Zenergy, actually, it wasn't a flow back hand. It was he didn't work for the frac company either. I think he was one of the trucking company hands. Got struck by lightning on a frac tank. There was a storm coming through. He was up there. Boom! It actually struck on the other end. They were all tied together, and he got zapped and fell over. Said it felt like someone hit him in the back of the head, because that was the exit area. So if there's a lightning storm out there, you probably don't want to be up high. Can we all agree on that?
Yep.
So weather is one concern. How about when it's blowing really, it's cold outside and it's blowing really hard? What's it like to work at heights then?
Scary.
I think it's something like every 5 feet you go up when it's cold, it adds like -1 degree or something, like every 5 or 10 feet. I can't remember the exact number, but it gets colder as you go up higher. So keeping a work area free of debris and clutter, ice, keeping track of the weather, working slowly and carefully, and avoiding dropping stuff. How do you avoid dropping stuff when you're up there working? What's the best way to do that? Tie your tools off. I mean, if you have a tool belt or something like that, you can just tie it off that way. I recommend, bungee straps work pretty good. You can use those so that you can use them without having to untether them, and you don't have like something rigid that's going to catch you and pull you backwards if you are moving around up at heights. So I recommend some sort of bungee. Good communication, making sure that if you do drop something, people know. What happens if you say watch out when you drop something below yourself?
Someone looks up.
And you get smashed in the face? They're not going to be very happy.
Just yell 4.
You can yell 4. What I recommend is between you guys, just if you have a word. In fact, let's establish a word right now. What's the word All Out's going to use for if you drop something? What are you going to say? And there's someone below you. Obviously, if you're out there by yourself, you're not going to say anything. but you know someone's below you. What are we going to say? That they can communicate. You communicating to them something's falling, and they probably shouldn't look up.
Heads up,
Heads up,
clear out.
clear out. What do you guys think about? How about all out? We'll just say all out. All out.
Duck.
Duck.
Doug.
I like duck. You guys okay with duck?
Try to make me look around. At least if you duck, you're gonna instead of
Yeah. What I like is avalanche or headache, so that they know something's coming down on top of them. Because if you duck, the problem with that is then you're exposing your neck, and that's not good either. So, and when you hear that, what you want to do is you want to square up underneath your hard hat. I don't recommend moving, actually, unless it's coming. I mean, it's hard to know, right?
Yeah, that's the first thing I want to do.
Because if you want to start running, but here's why. Statistically, I've never heard of anybody getting hit when they were told. I've heard of people moving into it. Because you start moving, you know what I mean? You get hit in your arm or your leg. Whereas if you're like this, if it hits your hard hat, it's going to hit your hard hat or your shoulder. But once you start moving, it hits your leg. I'll show you guys a picture of a guy who got hit in the leg when that happened. He was on a workover rig and he moved and the thing dropped and hit him on the foot. So preventing hazards from falling objects, obviously tying them off. What they do in the high-rise construction is they build nets and they put them, you know, kind of out, or they build it so that everything's enclosed in a net and it goes all the way down to the base of the building. You guys ever seen that? And that's so nothing falls out. It just kind of slides along that net and hits around that way, so you can kind of contain it. Also wearing hard hats. There's different types of workers out there in construction, but I'm not going to get into that really. Warning line systems. This is another thing you can build, mostly for trenches. There was a wireline hand. I don't know if you guys know this. Go Wireline. They had trenched in a line to that well site, and the wireline hand went to take a leak at nighttime. There wasn't a light tower over there, and fell in the trench. He was out for like 8 months. Couldn't walk right anyway. He was walking around limping. I think he might just barely be back on his feet 100% now. That was almost a year ago. So, you know, what you're supposed to do if you leave a trench uncovered or there's a big hole in the ground, what do you think you're supposed to do?
tape it off.
Tape it off, block it off. That's just common sense, right? Why do you think that doesn't happen?
Takes extra time.
Laziness.
Takes extra time. People are lazy. They're not thinking about other people, that people could fall into this thing. So don't just think about yourself, definitely think about other people around you, what you're doing, how it could affect them. Safety monitoring. This is where a guy, especially at heights, his only job is to watch people, making sure they're working safely. So that's a task out there. Controlled access zone. It's a combination of warning line system and a safety monitoring system. This is essentially if you're working at heights a lot and there's an area where people shouldn't walk underneath, you tape it off and you say no one walk under here unless you're authorized, right? Put up caution tape. Safety net systems, we talked about that, keeping people from falling. Guardrails, there's a lot of temporary guardrails. It sounds like you guys are using those already out there. I'm glad to hear that. For a scaffolding system of some sort. That's really good. That's a lot better. All right, so there are 4 components to a personal fall arrest system. The first one is a harness. The second one's your connectors. The third one is the anchorage, which includes the lanyard. A lot of people think it's a harness and a lanyard, but it's actually your anchor and the lanyard. Why do you think it's anchor and lanyard, not harness and lanyard?
Your anchor is supposed to be holding all the weight.
Yeah, your anchor and the lanyard together manage the weight. All your harness does is hold your body. What happens if you wear your harness too tight?
Your leg breaks some bones.
You're gonna break something. You guys ever worn a harness? What happens when you pulled it real tight? Where did you feel uncomfortable?
Push some huevos.
Back of my neck.
You can feel uncomfortable in the back of your leg. And there's a lot of YouTube videos. I'll leave that to you guys to watch by yourself. What happens when a guy falls in a harness that's too tight?
Pops some testicles.
There's videos about it. Which
Never wear
There's
too
a
tight.
guy that was on a coil job, and they were taking the coil off, and they cut the coil. He was in there with his lanyard, and it released on him.
yeah.
He had it tied off, and it sucked him and squeezed him tight and popped every bone in his body.
That's a bad day in the coal mining industry. All right, so harnesses can be used for fall arrest, fall protection, and suspension. A lot of times, if you do fall in these, it's not going to be very comfortable. They can cause injury. So you do not want to fall. You want to prevent yourself from falling over an edge. Falling and hanging in one of these is not fun. If you've ever had to wear one, it's not the best system. So when you put on a harness, to make sure that it's snug but not too snug, and also not too loose, because if it's too loose, you're going to get whiplash pretty bad when you actually do stop. You want to make sure it's snug, but not too snug. Okay, so you put it on, you do the shoulder check where you try to pull it over your shoulders. If you can pull over your shoulders, you have it too loose. And then every single area where it connects with your body, you want to be able to put in 3 fingers and move them around. If you put in a whole fist, it's not good. If you put in 1 finger and you can barely fit it in there, it's going to be too tight. Does that make sense? So that's it's a 3-finger rule. To make sure it's on correct as well, you flip that dorsal ring that you were talking about in the back. It should be right between your shoulder blades, and the one in the front should be right at your sternum. The reason for that is it holds you upright. If that dorsal one's up too high, you're going to be hanging kind of like this, and it's going to be pulling up underneath your rib cage and giving you some neck problems. And if it's too high up here, it's going to choke you when you fall. So you want to make sure you have it correct. So once again, your sternum and your shoulder blades. All right. If I had a board here, which I don't, I want you to hold on one second.
Well,
Move it.
All right. So
Relief.
all right. Imagine this. Here's the ground level. Here's the ground. Here's where Billy's working. Say it's 6 feet. And then Billy's 6 feet tall. So the top of his head's how many feet? 12 feet. All right. Where does Billy tie off?
12 feet.
Ties off right here. All right. Steve's guess. It's
You got like a
6 foot.
You got a 6 foot lanyard on.
We could say 6. Let's say it has a 6 foot lanyard. Does that change your answer?
Yes.
Okay. Steve's
Is
correct.
that standard?
Yeah, it's about standard. 6 feet. Yep. So he's got a 6 foot lanyard.
So he needs to go higher than that, 12 foot.
Well, he's already at 12 foot here.
You gotta go above
So just reach
I'm
up.
saying he's got to go
Reach up?
Reach up above that 12 foot.
How high?
However high you
4
can
feet.
reach.
How high you can reach? 4 feet? It's actually not far off. Where's your logic, though?
3 feet. 3 foot.
So we're saying as high as you can reach.
So another.
Let me get a real thing.
How do you get that high?
You gotta climb.
Tippy toe.
That's right, man. So, yeah.
Grab that other ladder. Lift it up.
All right, I got a Sharpie. That's no problem. All right, so here we are. Doug's up here. Okay. As high as you can reach. So how high would that be for you? You're about 6 feet tall. How high do you reach? 8 feet. So we're at 20 feet. That's actually a little bit higher than you need to be, but you'd be right there. That'd be an okay place to tie off. There's only 3 numbers that you need to know to figure out your. You guys brought it up. What's the one? Lanyard the length. We got lanyard. So we're saying how high is that? 6 feet. All right. The height of the person.
6 feet.
6 feet. All right. What does a lanyard have built into it? It's got the bungee, right? How much is that going to stretch? Does that matter?
Yes.
What you call that is the deceleration device. You can call it the bungee. You can call it the, there's another word for it, I'll remember it. Deceleration. The maximum that can be is 3.5 feet. That's OSHA requirement. So that's the most you're ever going to stretch is 3.5 feet. And what's that for? Slow down. So that's your shock absorbing portion of the lanyard. That's what I was looking for, shock absorber. So it's going to absorb the shock. So how many feet do we have there? And then you also have to have the 2.5 foot safety factor. Actually it's 2 feet, not 2.5 feet. So what is that up to? It's actually 17.5, or really we usually just round it up to 18.
Now, would it matter if there's stuff above ground?
Yeah, it would. So if you had some stuff here, let's say you had some rocks or some bricks or some crap here, guess what? You have to be 2 feet above whatever's right below you.
So what do you do if there's nothing higher?
Yep. that's where you'd use an SRL, or it would hold you from falling over the edge, which is, in my opinion, a better system. Sometimes that doesn't work though for different reasons. Like on tanks, it doesn't work. SRLs don't work because you can stretch that SRL because you just move slowly and you stretch it out. Well, what happens if you fall over the edge? You know what I mean? So like there's certain instances where it wouldn't work, but or you can use a lollipop, which is essentially something that's anchored, and then you have just a non-stretch, lanyard. So if you were to fall, you just drop down. You wouldn't fall up over the edge. So that's what you do. So once again, there's only 3 considerations here: is total lanyard length, total lanyard, person, height, and then safety factor. Does it matter how? Let's say this guy was super safe and he was only working at 3 feet, but he wanted to tie off. Where would he have to tie off? Doesn't matter. How high would he have to? 18 and a half or 18 feet. Because otherwise, if you fall over, what's going to happen? You're going to hit the ground. So for him to avoid hitting the ground, regardless of, he'd have to be over 2 feet, right? Because that's your safety factor. It doesn't make sense. But at 3 feet, you'd have to tie off at 18 feet to make sure that. Now you'd probably be walking around like this, you know what I mean? But that's kind of where you'd have to be. Or really, in that case, you don't use a 6-foot lanyard. You use a 4-foot lanyard, right? I mean, that's what you do. Or you don't tie off at 3 feet. But at 4 feet or above, this is what you have to do. You guys all on the same page there? Okay. Because that's a question a lot of people have is how high do we need to, or what's the calculation for tie-off point? It has nothing to do with how tall or how high up you're working. But the most free fall you can have is 6 feet. So the longest lanyard you'll ever have is 6 feet. You can't tie 2 lanyards together and make it 9 feet because it has to be 6 feet is the most. And then can't tie a knot in it either. Good question.
Make sure.
All right, so we talked about that already. So we kind of went through all this one. So if you're using a 4-foot lanyard, just to reiterate, you just subtract 2 feet from it. You're at 15 and a half or 16 feet. So instead of a 6-foot lanyard in that case. Connectors. Every day, what should you do when you're wearing fall protection?
Check it.
Inspection. That's a big part. So does your connector move freely? Is the weight rating, load rating stamped on it or not? If it's not, what do you do with it? Throw it away. There's 2 things in the oil field you always want to be looking for a reason to get a brand new one up. The first one is your harness. The second one is your respirator. You should always be looking for a reason to get a new one. If it looks broken, if it's bent up, if it's twisted, if it's rusted, if it's scratched, if it's greased up, what are you going to do with it? Chuck it. It's trash. You don't need it. Deceleration devices. We talked about these a little bit. Your shock absorbing lanyard. These are designed to absorb shock. Do you guys know how much force is put on a human body when you fall 6 feet? If you weigh about 220, let's say you weigh 220, you fall, how much weight?
5,000.
Did it say that?
Yeah.
Dang it. I was supposed to ask that before, but hey, way to read. You're reading. Now, this deceleration device pretty much brings it down to 1,800 pounds. So your body cannot take 5,000 pounds very well. You could, but it would hurt you pretty bad. Your bones would be feeling pretty good. And you guys might remember this from before. Do you remember what weighs 5,000 pounds? Not about. If you looked at the gross vehicle weight of your pickups out there, a half ton, about 5,000. So it's like having a pickup wrapped around you and pulling your body tight. That kind of weight. You know what I mean? So it's a decent amount. It's a
So
decent amount.
like on those movies where people are tied off with a rope and they fall above 20 feet and they just pop. They're like, oh,
You would not be okay. Definitely not.
back would break in half.
You'd be pretty messed up. That's why they don't wear the belts anymore. Because people would just they'd fall, but they'd be messed up for life. Like they'd be saved, but it's kind of like those.
Breaking it out.
Yeah, it's kind of like those fire extinguishers that have that gas that killed people. It dropped. It had this thing, and it melted the seal once it got hot enough, and it dropped, and then boom, fire went out right now. Sucked the oxygen out of the air and filled it with the poisonous gas, and people just died. So it's like,
Save the building.
they say the building killed the people. That's pretty much what
Hire new
happened.
people.
So, just you can do what Walmart did. They take out health or life insurance policies on their employees. So the hire old people take out life insurance policies, and when they die, they collect. It's pretty hardcore. You guys should think about these guys.
Read about that.
Isn't that crazy? They do that? Wow. All right. Yeah, it's pretty messed up. Never tie knots in lanyards or use them over sharp corners or edges. Obviously, you got to watch where you're using it. Also, you cannot. Now, think about this. These things can absorb 5,000 pounds static hit. Boom. You could pull out a vehicle with these, no problem. They would work as a tow rope. But if you use them as a tow rope, can you then use them as a lining? No, you
once
cannot.
they've been maxed like that, they're shot.
Exactly. So if you use it, or if you fall in it, you got to chuck it. Once again, you should always be looking for a reason to use a new one. Lifelines. Sometimes guys will use these. They'll hook up many people to the same line, kind of like one of those dog run deals. That's fine, but the wire has to be rated for 5,000 pounds per person on that line. That's kind of the requirement there. Talked about that a little bit. Inspection every single day. Some things you're going to look for. One is that the metal hardware is in round. If it's supposed to be round, it should always be round. It should never be oblong or twisted. That this webbing here is tight, not frayed, and that all the where it's sewed together, it should be sewed, not frayed. You guys okay with that? All right. What you'll see is the webbing sometimes when it gets pulled across something that's sharp, it rips it once and then it just starts to fray and just keeps going. Once again, look for a reason to do what?
Throw it away, get a new one.
Get a new one. And All Out loves to spend money on new harnesses, so don't worry about it. They'll just keep buying them for you. Check for UV damage. If you're working outside a lot with them, eventually UV does damage these. In fact, ultraviolet light and chemicals are lanyards or harnesses worst enemies. So UV, getting chemicals on there. They're not supposed to have any oil on them at all ever. That's the OSHA standard. Is that a reality?
Have you ever looked at a man lift?
I know, man. It's almost like you feel safe because it's so greased up that you feel like it's going to make it better.
Works good.
Yeah, it works good. It's kind of like towels, when you wet them down, they get a lot stronger. Something like that. That's not a problem. So you have to make sure that they have these tags on them and that you can read them. If you can't read them, you chuck the whole thing. Boom. Or use it as a tow rope. But the way to, let's say you did something to it or it fell in it, you still wanted to use it for something, that's fine. The first thing you have to do is cut the label off. And then guys who work for All Out would know, hey, can I use this? I don't see a label. No, I can't. This is not a proper, proper equipment. Lastly, and this is a lot of times overlooked, is if you have a rescue, if you do have people that are up in lanyards and they fall, how are you going to rescue them? And if the answer is we'll figure it out when it happens, that's a bad answer. How much time does a guy have when he falls before his blood starts to clot and his legs from hanging up there? You guys know? Starts in 30 seconds. Starts clotting. The circulation starts getting pinched off.
Cut it.
Cut your leg off?
Cut his
No,
ass
cut
down.
Cut the harness?
lanyard.
All right. You kid? As long as you're 2 feet from the ground, I'd say maybe that wouldn't be so bad.
That was 8 feet.
8 feet, cut it.
Tell him land on your feet.
Just
Tell them
roll.
to get on your back.
There's a couple different options here. One is they have these little things that actually strap onto the side of your harness. You unzip it, it drops down, and you step into it like a stirrup. So you have something to stand in. So your legs aren't, so your hips aren't taking up all that, taking all the weight. That's one option. But what if the guy's unconscious when he falls? Like something hit him in the head and he fell off. How much good are those going to do for him?
Oh, very.
So you got an unconscious guy hanging in the air. How are you going to get him down? Helicopter. It's option one. You can get a helicopter out there. How long is it going to take him to get there, the helicopter? Long time. So, what you need to do is saying, okay, look, just like the assessment we talked about before. Billy's up there. If he falls and he's hanging his harness, what are we going to do to get him down? Well, we have to have a few different options. Can we get him from above? Can we hoist him up? Can we hook onto him, hoist him up? Can we come up from below with a man lift or something? Put him in the man lift. And then once we get him, what are we going to do with him? Medical attention. How long has he been hanging there? Does that matter? What happens if you get a lot of blood clotted up in one spot, and all of a sudden you tell Billy to walk it off, and all that clotted blood goes through circulation? Where's it going to end up? With your heart. How does your heart manage or your head manage clotted blood? You get a stroke or a heart attack, and that happens. A lot of guys who fall.
Natural cause.
Yeah, that's the natural costing. A lot of guys who fall don't actually die from the fall. They die from not getting proper medical attention because they don't have a plan. They don't know. They haven't thought it through. So if a guy does fall like that, what you're supposed to do, and sometimes like when I have younger guys in the class, none of you guys are young enough to do this too, but I have them sit up against the wall for like 15 minutes and just sit there, and then I ask them just straight out, legs straight out in front of them, back straight up against the wall. And after 15 minutes, I ask them how their legs feel, and they can barely walk because they've fallen asleep. That's good when you fall because you want that circulation to return slowly. You don't want it all to rush out of there, right? So you sit them down, with the legs flat out in front of them in an L shape. If they do fall, and that reduces the circulation. That slows down
That's why
circulation.
you just carry a knife with you and
Just cut it down.
So
I don't want
basically, if you're
I don't
gonna
want
do-
Steve to be my
If
rescue
you're gonna
partner.
do a JSA, if you're doing your JSA, if you have work that you're gonna
Be tied off.
fall protection, you gotta have one of these rescue plans.
Yep, you can put it in there. You could write it out on a piece of paper. You know, if Joey falls, we're going to call dispatch 911, and where this is our plan to get him down.
And honestly, we typically don't.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think I've used mine once. That was just to go on top of the office shack.
Just to get up there. Yeah, that's good. That's right. I mean,
Have
you're,
y'all
you're supposed to use
used
one.
it?
What I recommend for that is get one of those SRLs that keeps you from actually falling. That's like the best system because then you don't have to worry about all this stuff. And you can buy them for hunting. I've never seen a safety one, but there's actually a little mechanism that for when you fall, if you fall out of your tree stand, you push a button and it brings you back to the top.
the only time I could see us needing one was if you got to get on top of the P tank.
They make one that if you fall, it actually stops you and then releases you down.
See that kind of thing. That's what you want to do. And they have that for hunting as well.
Yeah, that's for hunting.
Yeah, that's
That's a bow harness.
that's the best type of system that you could actually have. Would be that right
It's
there.
expensive as shit.
Yeah, it is really expensive.
What?
It's 400, the dummy gauges come off the
Oh,
track.
yeah, on
you
top
don't
of the area.
get- I was up there all the time.
I'd watch out for that too because you don't know the condition of the tops of those tanks. Like you could fall through and then
You
you're
gotta
really
get up there
screwed.
and just throw a sight glass over.
Yeah, but they have those ladders that are you're enclosed.
No,
Right.
yeah,
Still
climb
above
up, the dummy
400.
gauge is on the other side.
Oh yeah.
Is that basin stuff?
Here's these things.
So here's the requirement: if you have a guy working over 4 feet, what
Energy,
you're supposed to have is it's possible.
Is that true?
What you're supposed to have is a guy or a team. Either you have an internal rescue guy for your company, or you have a rescue team available that can be there in 15 minutes. What's the likelihood of that happening in North Dakota? 95% volunteer rescue services in North Dakota. So what does that mean if they're volunteer? Where are they at during the day?
Drinking.
At the bar.
They're at the bar. They're working. They're doing one of the two. They're not at the either they're not at the fire hall just waiting for a call. You know what I mean? They're working. So when they get a call, everybody's got to muster up at the fire hall. Who knows where they're at? They might be in Montana or frickin' Dickinson working. They all got to come back, load up in the ambulance, and then go get you.
The ambulance drivers are volunteer.
95% of them. That's the situation we're in North Dakota. So
So you're better off just driving. If one of us gets hurt, we're better off driving them to the hospital.
I mean, a lot of times volunteer people are not in the oil field. They're actually the people who work in the community, so they get there relatively quickly. But I wouldn't trust that. You know, I mean, personally.
If you got hurt, you would want somebody to drive you.
With that and the weather and no telling road conditions.
And then people in North Dakota do not move out of the way for ambulances. I don't know if you've seen this. There's nothing that pisses me off more than when I see a vehicle just putzing along in front of an ambulance with its lights on. Nothing that pisses me off more than that. But I see it all the time. You know what I mean?
Oh, they'll get out the way.
Not all the time. So employee trained rescue, you can, well, like I said, have an internal guy who can do it. And the reason for that is suspension trauma. Some symptoms that you're going to experience if you're hanging out there for too long. First of all, you're going to feel faint. Blood's going to stop flowing to your brain, so you're going to start to feel faint. You're going to experience nausea, dizziness, grain, loss of vision, and also unconsciousness eventually. So you can kick your legs around real fast. You can swing yourself from side to side when you're hanging up there. But really, if you don't have a rescue plan and someone to get you down relatively soon, you might lose your legs. You could have a lot of pooled up blood that clots and then returns back to your heart when you get down. A lot of bad things could happen. So you want to have a plan before a guy goes up there. So if a guy does fall, activate your company rescue plan. If necessary, call 911. You're going to report the incident, and then lastly, you're going to investigate. So why did this incident happen? And that's kind of going to be all of our jobs. So any questions about fall arrest systems? Nope. Let me show you a real quick video here. Road. Used to just pop up right away. Used to get a lot of new of these. There she goes.
Come on, go.
All right.
Just cut it. Just cut it. Come on now. You better get that rope.
So what this is actually
landed on top of his friend.
there's a
Okay.
school out there. There's plenty of schools. You actually get trained. It's called High Angle Rescue, where you get trained to rescue people at heights. Because you might think it's easy. So right now he's taking his time. He's working. Then what happens?
Gets rushed.
Guy rushes him, and he doesn't take his time. Cuts the wrong rope. Billy goes down, and then Johnny comes down on top of him. You know what I mean? And what has he got in his hand? An open knife falling down on top of Billy. Right. So person from the south. Come on, go.
Just cut it. Just cut it. Come on now. You better get that rope.
Damn, that hurt.
Yeah, that was not fun. Yeah, so I mean that's one thing that you got to think about is
What's
what
that bottom
happens.
right one down there?
There's you right there.
Oh, shit.
What do you do in this instance? What's the proper procedure?
Stab
Stab
it.
This is way too long. I'm just gonna say that right now.
No,
What is
Drew's going after. This guy can have a whole camera. Use the Blair Witch Project or something.
Fun.
He's laughing
Too
too
hard.
hard.
What is
Well, those horns would be scary too, because you wouldn't want to slap on something.
What's that do?
What do you say?
What's that? What that do,
Teach a lesson. Yeah, that's not a very good. I don't know if that's his boyfriend or what, but man. Yeah.
She'd be kicking it over here.
No,
Like a piece of gum.
No, we're good.
Wow. Alright, I gotta send you that. Alright, well, I'm gonna pass this out real quick. I'm gonna get you guys some legitimate pens because the ones I have here are full of crap.
Is this on y'all's website now?
Yes, I think it is. Yep.
Because I looked the other day and I saw, but it showed OSHA.
It didn't show PEC. It should have.
So all the dates were.
It's the opposite week. So the OSHA classes are 2nd and 4th,
Okay.
and yeah, we got one in March on the 5th and then one on the 19th, and then February on the 5th and the 19th as well. And then that one we had
Can I have one of those tests?
a couple days ago. Sorry.
I mean, I'm fine with not taking one, but
All right.
I
You're
figured
exempt this time.
they
man.
might want me to.
So we need to get them on the 19th.
Are we gonna do that?
So the first person that can name for me right now the 4 parts of a fall arrest system is going to get a $25 gift certificate next state to me.
Hold on, what's that?
Harness, anchorage,
Harness,
lanyard,
anchor, lanyard. What's the last one?
rescue card.
You got it. Now you got to say them all for me though. Oh no,
Harness,
don't take.
anchorage, lanyard, rescue card.
There you go.
Thank you.
That's exactly right. You guys all sign.